Hey, what's up, everybody? This is the Helpful Hacker, and today we are going over the Digital Forensics Fundamentals room from TryHackMe. So we'll jump right in and get started with task number 1, Introduction to Digital Forensics. So basically, this will just define digital forensics, which is using a methodology or a procedure to investigate slash solve a crime. So that's forensics in general. And then digital forensics would just be anything digitally related to that. So if there's a cyber crime that's committed, digital forensics would be heavily involved there. Or if there's a physical crime that's committed, like a murder, um, in that case, you would still have digital forensics involved because you would want to look at the person's phone, their laptop, see, who were they texting? Who were they talking to? Did somebody else know about it? That kind of stuff. So that all falls under digital forensics. So you can read through this. They then give you kind of a fun little example with a bank robbery and some of the different type of evidence that would be collected. And it would be digital forensics evidence, right? Because here they have a digital map, there's a hard drive. Again, it's talking about a document on a hard drive, media files, photos, videos. So that all is still digital forensics, even though these people didn't commit a cyber crime, they physically robbed a bank, right? So we can read through all that. And then at the bottom here, we have our learning objectives, and that's just going to explain some of the stuff we'll learn about. So we'll jump down and answer question number 1. So if you read the whole case involving the bank robbery and everything, you'll find the answer to this. And it is digital forensics. So answer with that. And with that, you're done with task 1. Now it's on to task 2, digital forensic methodology. So there's lots of different ways to go about doing things, but generally speaking, there's a common methodology for digital forensics. And part of that is what is listed right here. You have collection, examination, analysis, and reporting. And here it talks about NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards, super useful, and they have frameworks for different areas of technology, and they introduced the process of digital forensics in 4 phases. So this is their framework for digital forensic methodology. There are other ones and they may slightly differ, but generally speaking, it's the same idea. And me personally, when I think of the digital forensic methodology, I combine examination and analysis kind of into one. So I think of it in 3 steps, which is as simple as collect everything that needs to be collected, or I call that acquisition, or different frameworks call that acquisition or collection, either or. And then you need to look at it, right? And here they split up examination and analysis. In examination, they basically describe that as finding all the useful information, right? Not just grabbing everything, but finding the useful information. And then analyzing is taking a look at that useful information and figuring out what's relevant to the case and all that. So I kind of combine those into one. And so it's just the collection, the analysis, and then the reporting. But either way, all frameworks are going to be very similar, and they might divide things up slightly differently, but that's the idea behind forensics, right? You're always going to have to get the evidence, then you're always going to have to analyze or look at or go through the evidence in some fashion, and then you will have to report on it. Now, if you're doing this for a criminal case, you may have to report on it in court and be like an expert witness. If you're doing it privately, you probably won't need to do that. So that's kind of the basic methodology, and this is the one from NIST. Then we have different types of forensics. Within forensics, there's a bunch of different kind of things you could look at, or you could even specialize in some of these, like malware forensics, disk forensics, memory forensics, mobile forensics. There's quite a few. And so you can read about the different types down here. The truth is you should just kind of be able to do most of these, right? Now, some of these are quite different. Like cloud forensics is going to be very different than disk forensics. There's a lot of different things that you have to think about and worry about. Mobile forensics, that's going to be different than looking at a computer, but there's still a lot of similar concepts there that you're going to use. Network forensics, same thing. Memory forensics, that often goes hand in hand with disk forensics. If you're looking at a computer hard drive, you're also going to want to be looking at the memory. So yeah, all these things are related but kind of different. So it's good just to kind of know everything, right? Always keep on learning. So you can read about those, and then we'll answer these questions. Which phase of digital forensics is concerned with correlating and collecting data to draw any conclusion from it? That would be analysis, when we're actually really digging into it. And then which phase of digital forensics is concerned with extracting the data of interest from a collected device? So this is what they call examination. I just group that in with analysis because I'm simple and I don't want to make more steps. So I keep that down to 3. So with that, we're done with task 2. Now it's on to task 3, evidence acquisition, which is always super important. It's important that you're getting all the evidence, that you're getting the right evidence, that evidence isn't tampered with, that evidence maintains its integrity. Sometimes it's not even being tampered with, but just, if you do something wrong, you could potentially damage digital evidence, right? So this is always very important. And so part of this, you need proper authorization. This is for both private and if you were doing criminal investigations. Privately, you need the person's permission. You can't just go like steal someone's laptop and do a forensic on it. That would be illegal. And then same thing if you're doing it for like a police department or something. The police officer can't just go start taking stuff. You need a warrant, right? A search warrant, or you need just some sort of proper authorization to look at that. So that's always important. You also have chain of custody. This is important in both private and criminal forensics. Like if you were doing it again for, police officer, FBI, but it's really important if you're doing it for criminal stuff because you got to make sure everything maintains its integrity, right? Whereas if you're doing private forensics, the chain of custody is usually just like one person. It's like you gave me permission. I took your computer to the lab and I did the forensic on it. Still important, just in case any other people mess with it or anything like that, but less important for private investigations, more important for criminal ones. So yeah, chain of custody. And all that is it just right here, it's going to describe the evidence. It's going to name who got it, like who collected it initially, when they collected it. Then it's going to say where is it stored, how is it stored, and it's going to say who has accessed it and when did they access this piece of evidence, right? So that's all really important if you're going to go to court. Then the last thing they talk about here are write blockers, which are also really important. They can be physical and they can also be digital. I have only used physical write blockers. So, but I'm sure there's probably great digital ones. And I'm not sure if physical ones are required for court, maybe for some reason. Because when it comes to like legal stuff, there's a lot of rules surrounding things. So and I've never done a full legal like forensic for like a murder or anything. So I'm not sure what they use. That'd be something fun that someone should go look up. Do they have to use a physical write blocker or could they use a digital one? And if so, how do you vet that digital write blocker, right? Because software is not built equally, and I guess neither is a physical write blocker, but I feel like you're safer there because you need to know one good manufacturer, whereas a digital write blocker, like anyone could make that and try to distribute it, but I digress. So my experience with these has all been physical, but what they do is when I take someone's hard drive out of their computer and I plug it into another computer to analyze it, if you're not careful, again, potentially your computer could interact with that and then start changing things. I think in their example, let's see. Yeah, like it may alter timestamps on files on the hard drive. And so that would be a problem because then that digital evidence no longer is accurate. So a write blocker, what that does is it basically makes a copy without messing with anything. So it's not going to write anything to this. That's why it's called a write blocker. So nothing will be able to write to the drive. You can only copy off of the drive. So really important for data acquisition. Now, which tool is used to ensure data integrity during collection? Just talked about it. That'll be a write blocker. And then what is the name of a document that has all the details of the collected digital evidence? That's the chain of custody, right? Perfect. Okay, so with that, we're done with task 3. On to task 4, Windows forensics. So now this, I don't know why it says Windows forensics. Well, I guess I kind of do. Because the reason why it says that is because they're going to talk about some tools that are specifically for Windows. Right? There's a couple of tools that are specifically for the Windows operating system, but the general ideas here in this task, they really apply to all OSs, so Mac and Linux as well. But basically, you can read this top part. Again, it's just going to talk more about different operating systems and kind of some of the stuff you might find at a crime scene that would become digital forensics. But here, it's talking about you take forensic images, which are byte by byte copies of the entire operating system. And here there's 2 categories of forensic images that they're going to talk about. The first is the disk image, which is kind of what everybody starts with, generally speaking. If you're like going to get into digital forensics, or if you're going to do a CTF, you're probably going to have to make a copy, a disk image of something, or they'll give you a forensic image of the disk and then you analyze it, right? And all that this is, when they say disk image, that's just the hard drive. And here they describe it as non-volatile. And what that means is that the disk data would survive even after the computer is restarted, right? So let's say I plan to, we'll use their example, I plan to rob a bank and I type a bunch of stuff into my computer, I save files, right? And then I shut off my computer, or maybe I even like punch the screen of my laptop or whatever, because I think that'll stop them, right? It really won't, because the computer inside it, there's its hard drive. And so the disk image is just a copy of that hard drive, that HDD or SSD. And so on that, I can see pretty much everything that was stored there, right? So this is going to be all the files, so any documents, internet browsing history, and a bunch of other stuff, OS stuff, it's all going to be saved there. And it's non-volatile because, again, it survives a restart. Whereas memory, this is volatile because it would not survive a restart of my computer. And so to kind of really understand this, you need to know a bit about CPU and about RAM and what the difference is and how computers work. And I'm not going to go all the way down that rabbit hole. Just know that the memory image contains all the data inside the operating system's RAM, or random access memory. And so when you're working on a computer, you have some of the stuff on your computer is contained inside an HDD or an SSD. But some of it's also inside the RAM, right? And so if, again, back to that scenario, I'm planning to rob a bank and I'm doing stuff, I'm actively doing stuff on my computer, and then I shut it off, the RAM is gone. So when forensics shows up to grab my computer, they're not going to have a memory image of when I was using the computer. Now, if they bust in the door before I restart my computer and they get to my computer before I restart it or while I'm using it, then they can get a memory image, and that will contain all of the operating system's RAM. And this is great because it gives you stuff like open files. So what exactly was I working on in that moment? Running processes, current network connections, bunch of stuff. And the memory image should be prioritized first because, again, it's more volatile. And so in forensics, you can probably just Google this, but they have like, what would I call it? I would call it like an order of volatility. That's exactly what I would call it. Yeah, the order of volatility inside a computer. And so there's different things that when a forensic person shows up, they're going to try and capture first. And one of the last things they're going to look at is the disk image, because that's there, right? It's sitting there on the drive. It's not going anywhere. Whereas a memory image, that might disappear if the computer restarts or something. So anyways, so read through both of those. Those are kind of the first things that you look at as a beginner doing forensics. And then we're going to talk about some tools that actually allow you to get a disk image or a memory image and then analyze it. So first, FTK Imager. This takes forensic images for Windows operating systems, which is great. So yeah, and it's super easy to use. You can just Google how to use it. It's free to download, so that's awesome. And then Autopsy is an open source basically forensic software that allows you to actually do some image analysis, right? So you can keyword search, you can look for deleted file recovery, you can see file metadata, stuff like that. So Autopsy can help you analyze that disk image. Then we have our memory image, right? The thing that's more volatile, hence the name volatility of this software. So first, you could use something like Dump It, which allows you to take the image of the memory of a Windows operating system, right? So Dump It would allow you to get the image, and then you could take that memory image and you could plug it into a software like Volatility, and this is going to allow you to analyze the memory image or images if there's multiple. So again, this one, is this one Windows only? Yeah, so I think Dump It is Windows only. Volatility can work on all OSs, and then it's similar up here. FTK Imager is for Windows, but Autopsy, you can do that on Linux, Mac, really anything. So yeah, and then it says down here, there's lots of other tools. And when you get to a professional level, like when you do this for a job, you don't use these open source tools. You usually use very expensive, very fancy tools where you have to pay for licensing and it's really expensive, but they're really nice softwares that do a lot of stuff for you. So anyways, let's jump down to the question. Which type of forensic image is taken to collect the volatile data? That would be a memory image, because that's volatile. Okay, so with that, we're done with task number 4. Now it's on to task number 5. Practical example of digital forensics. So here you can either download the task file, or I have my attack box open here. So I'm just going to open up the terminal, and then I'm going to cd. They gave me, here it is. So I'm just going to cd into that. Root, rooms, introduction, digital forensics, ls. And then here are a bunch of the files that I'm going to have to work with, right, to answer some of their questions. But before we get down to the questions, they have some stuff that they want to explain, right? And what they're going to talk about here is they're going to talk about metadata, which gets saved when you mess with files, right? And metadata is just data about data. So if I write a text document and I save it, the metadata is just going to tell me about that text document, right? It's data about data. So here's an example. They talk about the PDF info tool. And so this tool lets you look at the metadata for a PDF document. And so here, this is an example output. You just put PDF info followed by the document name, and then it can tell you the creator, the producer, the creation date. That's a useful one in forensics. You want to know when things happen. So it has a creation date or a modified date as well. So when was it created, but when was it changed also? Different stuff like that. Is there JavaScript? No. How many pages? PDF version that was used? All that kind of stuff. So you can learn more about that tool just by doing man PDF info. Oh, let me do this right. Or PDF info. Oh, geez. I'm struggling. Don't need 2 N's. Here we go. So this will give you the manual pages for PDF info. If you go down, there's a bunch of different options that you can use. So yeah, useful stuff if you want to learn more about that tool. And again, like I said earlier, once you start doing this like for work, most other softwares, like in this example, Autopsy, it automatically lets you look at file metadata. So you don't have to use these command line tools that we're going to use in the example. If you really were doing a real forensic case, you would probably have some sort of software that would just automatically allow you to look at the metadata of any file you want to, right? So that was PDF info. Then they tell us here a little bit about photo EXIF data, and that stands for exchangeable image file format. And basically, it's just a standard way of saving metadata to image files. So when I take an image with my phone or a camera, there's metadata that is saved about that image. And some of that information is like what camera was used or what kind of smartphone model was used. When did that happen or where did it happen? Photo settings like focal length, aperture, shutter speed, all like a bunch of stuff. And we'll get to look at some of that here in a minute. So there's this command line tool, EXIF tool, and you just use that followed by the name of the image you want to look at the metadata for, and then it will output a bunch of metadata about that image, right? So you can read through this. This is just a little tip because we're going to have to answer a question down here where we're going to have to use Google Maps and find a location using longitude and latitude. And so this just kind of helps us. We got to get rid of some white space and then use this symbol to actually, search it properly. So down to the questions. Using PDF info, find out the author of the attached PDF file, ransomletter.pdf. So we want to know the author. So let's do our PDF info, and that was ransomletter dot .pdf, right? And then let me just make sure. Yeah, we have ransomletter.doc and we have ransomletter.pdf. So let's look at that. And here we go. We can see all of this metadata about pdf.info. And actually, you know what? This whole time I've had this pretty... Okay, I don't know why it's not letting me zoom the way I normally do. But let's zoom in. We're going to make this view way better so you can actually read it. Sorry, that whole time I was zoomed out. Okay, so here's our metadata, and we want to know who the author is, and we can see here Anne Gree Shepherd. She's the author. So let's copy that. We'll paste that in here. And with that, we get the right answer. So awesome. So that was using PDF info, right? Looking at metadata. Now it wants us to use EXIF tool, which is metadata for images, to try to find where the kidnappers took the image, right? So if I go back here, let's clear this. Let's ls. We have the letter image.jpg. So let's EXIF tool, and then we'll use letter image.jpg. And now this outputs a lot of information. So, boy, yeah, you didn't know there was so much information you could write about an image, but there is. So here's all the stuff about it that you could probably ever want to know about this image, right? But we are looking specifically for the location of this image. And if we come down here, here we go. So GPS latitude and GPS longitude. I'm just going to copy both of those. And then I'm going to open up Google Maps. Here we go. I'm going to paste both of those in here. And then I got to clean this up, right? We got to get rid of some of this stuff. And they told us when we do this, what did they tell us? They gave us tips. I know this degree has to be turned into this symbol. And hey, I was too lazy to look it up. If any of you know how to make that symbol with your keyboard, leave a comment and let me know so that I can actually remember for my future. So I think if we just get rid of the degrees and put that symbol, I think that should give us the answer. Okay. So this has given us the latitude and longitude. It looks like we're in London in the United Kingdom. And this is on Milk Street. So let's try that as our answer and see if it worked. Yep, Milk Street is the right answer. And then the last question, what is the model name of the camera used to take the photo? We can jump back here. And now we're looking for model name. And it looks like, my guess is this is going to be towards the top. Just because like we have file name, author name, like all that kind of stuff is going to be towards the top. So let's look, all file, meme type, camera model name. Here we go. So hopefully you can see that right there. So this is going to be the Canon EOS R6. So let's paste that in. And with that, we have finished task number 5. And you finished the Digital Forensics Fundamentals Room from TryHackMe. If you found the video helpful, give it a like and subscribe, and consider becoming a member.